Hello, hello, hello. Happy, what is it? Is it Wednesday today? We are live for a Live Lawyers Reacts. It's kind of an emergency meeting of the law nerds because what is even happening with Real Housewife of Salt Lake City, Jen Shah, getting indicted and arrested? Like, she is trying to take the crown of the Real Housewives, maybe change the storyline from everybody talking about Erica Jane getting ready for Real Housewives of Beverly Hills season 11 and Erica Jane's divorce and bankruptcy and potential criminal investigation. Well, this is a whole ass criminal investigation and an indictment and an arrest, and there's so much happening. Whenever somebody gets arrested, I'm hesitant to say it's Shah-mazing, but I'm just going to let you tell me if you think it's Shah-mazing. It's definitely in the Bravo world. It's definitely tea. I mean, it's news. This is probably not welcome news for Jen Shah. So today I'm going to break down the indictment, the underlying indictment, the press release from the U.S. Attorney's Office, my kind of thoughts on it and background with it. I was a criminal prosecutor for over 10 years. I've done work with the U.S. Attorney's Office. I've worked with federal agents. So that perspective. And then I'm going to break down a little bit of the tea that I heard in the largest Bravo clubhouse room yesterday for others that are connected with production. They kind of said how this arrest went down. So we're going to do that first. There's lots of speculation about this online, but again, these are all allegations. They have not been proven in a court of law. This is a criminal indictment. Oh my goodness, so much is happening. If you're part of the replay crew, welcome. Just go ahead and look at the timestamps down below and you'll get exactly to where you need to be. And if you're not a law nerd yet, just go ahead and subscribe to the channel. You're a law nerd, and we break down all the legal shit that you want to know about. So we need to just get into this one because what is even happening today? Hey there. If we haven't met yet, I'm Emily D. Baker, the badass lawyer and everyone's favorite legal commentator. I'm the host of The Emily Show, and I break down the legal shit behind the news and pop culture stories we all want to talk about. I have been a licensed attorney for over 15 years, but this is not legal advice. I should warn you, I'm a big fan of the cursey words. This channel is where the law nerds unite to talk about facts, not fuckery. I haven't even had coffee yet today, y'all, because it's been like that. So I am going to talk a little bit of the background details of the arrest, then the indictment, then the underlying indictment, a little bit about what the U.S. Attorney's Office said, my thoughts and questions. We'll do that all at the end. So the first thing we really need to get into is kind of the circumstances of arrest as told by those in Clubhouse, the amazing Bravo watcher community, the Bravo spotters, the Instagram accounts, the subreddit threads, the podcasts, the people who have sources at production, all of them. So much information came out about this yesterday, and we're going to talk about that first because tea. So what was shared in this clubhouse yesterday and what I've seen shared online, in case you don't know who Jen Shah is, she's a, how do you describe Jen Shah? She is a polarizing housewife. She has said her favorite housewife is Teresa Giudice. She kind of plays that role on the show. She is loud. She is volatile. She didn't flip a table. She definitely broke a glass. She flaunts wealth on wealth on wealth, lavish parties. Her husband's a football coach. She's just, blingy bling, bling bling, blingity bling bling, bling bling. That is her situation on the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, which is a new franchise. So what was relayed by those in Clubhouse that had sources close to production is that yesterday the ladies were getting ready to leave on one of the cast member or crew trips. That's something that's frequent on the Real Housewives. They were getting ready to pop off to Colorado for their cast trip. Jen Shah got a call, said apparently to the ladies or to production or all, her husband was heading to the hospital and she had to go. She had to get out. And after she left the trip, the team headed out, the crew headed out, the ladies headed out, and their van was pulled over by federal agents, and the ladies were questioned. Apparently that was all filmed. Jen Shah was then arrested in the car that she was in. I'm not going to say she was trying to get away. She might have been trying to get home to change her clothes. We don't know. Hopefully we'll find out, but she was arrested there and then taken into federal custody. She appeared in court yesterday. She is going to appear in court in New York today. This is a case out of the Southern District of New York. So it seems that perhaps the federal agents went to her home first to look for her. She wasn't there. Her husband called her and were like, federal agents are looking for you. The question was, how, did she know that this was going to happen? Because most people would be like, what do you mean there's a federal investigation? I don't even know what you're talking about. But when we pulled this case up yesterday, it became clear that Jen Shah is defendant number 11 in this case. That means there are 10 other defendants that were charged in 2019 in connection with this scheme. And because there are 10 other defendants, she was aware, in my opinion, that people she was connected with in this had already been arrested. But given that, when did she audition for Housewives of Salt Lake City? One of the Bravo watchers, let me know. I know this was filmed running up before COVID. So when was this filmed? Because this indictment came down for the original indictment in November 2019. So had she already signed on to the show? Had she not? I have so many questions about that. I'm sure we'll find out in the days to come. So we should just get into what she's charged with, get into the indictment, and talk about that. There are pictures online of her coming out of the federal courthouse. She was in full glam, but I understand because her makeup artist posted on Instagram, her glam looks good. She was in box braids. I don't think a lot of people appreciated that. Or at least that's the commentary that I've seen. And I totally understand it with regards to Jen Shah, but she was in full glam. It seems like she was actually anticipating going on the crew trip. And so when she's walking out of the federal courthouse yesterday after being arrested, she's in leopard boots that come up to her legs, blue jeggings and a mink coat, because of course she was. So let's talk about the indictment first, the underlying indictment, what the U.S. attorneys had to say about it, and then we'll talk a little bit about what went down in court yesterday. I realized I didn't say that. So, this is very helpful. What FC? They announced Real Housewives of Salt Lake City at BravoCon in November 2019. So she knew she was going to be on the show shortly before other people were indicted. Interesting. Imagine what those conversations were like. Do you think she told production, oh, by the way, I don't think she did. That's pure speculation on my part. I think Jen Shah doesn't tell production. So the coffee's still hot. Thank goodness. All right. Indictment. You know how we do it? Emily's never got her screen share going before she needs to because preparation. No, we're prepared. You guys, we're back. We're back in black today because yes, it was an AC/DC reference. Back in black. Look, if you're new here, hi, I'm Emily D. Baker. I'm a lawyer. I'm a Bravo addict. And I'm a giant nerd who has ADHD and dyslexia. So yes, sometimes I break out into song. I do that. It happens. It's a thing. Let's get into this indictment. This indictment coming out of the Southern District of New York. You may have heard of them. They are the AUSAs that do not play. This is a sealed superseding indictment, grand jury indictment. That means that this went to a grand jury. They were presented with, testimony and other forms of evidence. And they were like, yeah, we think you did that. Now, that is not a criminal trial standard. That is a lower standard of proof I shouldn't say, yeah, you did that. I should say the grand jury standard is more like, I can see it. I can see that you would have done that. Seems good. Yep. Sounds like it to me. Cool. Indictment. That's the probability there. That's the legal term is, I can see it. That's not the legal term for preponderance of the evidence or reasonable probability. It's not the legal term, but you all get me. So this is the grand jury indictment. This was sealed. So this was filed a number of days before the arrest came down. It was 5 days prior to the arrest being yesterday, March 30th. 5 days prior to the arrest, the grand jury indictment was issued and sealed, which means nobody would have seen it. Nobody would have known it came down. It was on the docket. They unseal it, and then the arrest is based on this indictment. So they unseal it and arrest all in the same day. Count 1, conspiracy to commit wire fraud. Wire fraud means essentially using the wires. And I'm just going to say, if you're listening to this and you're like, Emily, are you going to talk about your favorite book, Ghost in the Wires? Yes, I am. No, I'm not sponsored by Audible, but if you have not listened to the book Ghost in the Wires and you have any interest in like white collar crime, criminality, and hacking, it is a fantastic book about one of the very first hackers tracked down by the FBI, written from his perspective about how he was hacking the FBI to find out what they knew about him. Fascinating book. But the wires used to just refer to the phone lines. It refers to the internet, the interwebs, and in this case, actually the phone lines, because this is regarding a telemarketing scheme. There are 2 schemes. We'll talk about the schemes. They've named them. The names aren't sassy. They're AUSAs. We get it. There's not a lot of sass in criminal law because it just it doesn't hit quite right with criminal law because you're trying to like put people in prison. So being kind of quirky and sassy is generally in poor taste. So this is just a very straightforward indictment, but it does have some information and there is a little bit of tea in the press release. So we'll get into that. Overview of the scheme. In or about 2012. Until at least in or about March 2021. This shit kept happening until we arrested you at the end of the month. In the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, Jennifer Shah and Stuart Smith. For those of you that are not Housewives Bravo diehards, Stuart Smith is her ride or die #1 assistant, often seen in the show driving her around and doing whatever she asked him to. So he was also in this, also arrested yesterday. Defendants, together with others, known and unknown. Remember, they are defendants 10 and 11. There are others. The participants carried out a wide-ranging telemarketing scheme that defrauded hundreds of victims throughout the United States, many whom were over the age of 55, by selling these victims so-called business services in connection with the victims' purported online businesses, the business opportunity scheme. So the BizOp scheme sounds like hey, we're going to get you a business. And then once you get a business, we're going to get you all these other services. But there was really no business. It was just selling them a fake business that didn't really exist, that they never intended for them to make money on. In order to participate in the business opportunity scheme, participants, including Shah and Smith, the defendants engaged in widespread coordinated effort to traffic in lists of potential victims or leads, many of whom had previously made an initial investment to create an online business with other participants in the scheme. Leads were initially generated by sales floors operating in, among other places, Arizona, Nevada, Utah. The owners, operators of these sales floors. Now, a note on this as I pause reading this indictment. In the underlying indictment from November 2019, there are numerous others who are alleged to be the owners of these sales floors. So they're in this too. Back to the indictment. The owners and operators of these sales floors operated in coordination with several telemarketing sales floors in New York and New Jersey area, including Manhattan. That's their jurisdiction for why Southern District of New York gets this case, and provided lead lists and assistance in fighting victim refund requests. That's never something you want to hear in the consumer world, is the fighting of victim refund requests to other participants operating these floors. Paragraph 3, Shah and Smith, defendants, among other things, generated and sold leads to other participants for use by their telemarketing sales floors with the knowledge that the individuals they had identified as, quote, leads would be defrauded by other participants. So their alleging, the AUSAs are alleging that they knew that the leads they were passing on were being passed on to be essentially milked of their cash and not actually provided services. Shah and Smith yielded a share of the fraudulent revenue per the terms of their agreement with these participants, indicating that to me that the AUSAs either have a written agreement or have knowledge of an agreement with those participants, because they're not going to put that language in the indictment. And this has been proven to a grand jury. There is some kind of either written agreement or somebody has testified and shared what the terms of those agreements were for this to be alleged, which is really interesting to me. Shah and Smith often controlled each aspect of the frauds perpetuated by other participants on the individuals they had identified by, among other things, determining which, quote, coaching sales floor could buy leads from them. So in this, it sounds to me as if Shah and Smith were saying, okay, these leads go to this group, these leads go to that group, and we're in charge of determining which scheme the leads were going to. Back to the indictment, it says determining which, quote, coaching sales floor could buy leads from them, selecting the downstream sales floors that the, quote, coaching sales floor was permitted to pass the leads along to. So this is going through a leveling of people, choosing the firms to provide, quote, fulfillment services, that is documents and records purporting to demonstrate that the services the participants claimed to provide to those victims were actual and legitimate, setting how much the downstream sales floor could charge, and determining which, quote, products each of the downstream sales floors would sell. So they're alleging quite substantial acts here of control by Shah and Smith. It's interesting to me that they're using this downstream language similar to MLM language. Now, they're not alleging in this anywhere. I know I'm going to get asked questions because Utah, because telemarketing, but they're not alleging that this is a pyramid scheme or a Ponzi scheme. They're alleging that this is a telemarketing scheme. If they were alleging that it was some type of a pyramid scheme, they would say that there's actually particular laws for that. If they were alleging it was a Ponzi scheme, they would allege that there's actually laws for that. They're alleging that this is the fraudulent selling of shit that didn't exist, and then the selling of these lists of people so that they could be defrauded. Kind of two hands of this wire fraud. So they're using similar language to like an MLM, but there's no recruiting component, or there's no the leads bringing in other people component. This part as alleged seems to be controlled largely by Shah and Smith in the getting the leads to these particular sales floors and letting them be then defrauded, like delivering them for the frauds is a good way to put it. Back to the indictment, paragraph 4, to perpetuate the business opportunity scheme, the BOS, like boss. Not a boss. This is not a business. This is a fraud ring. Sorry, I digress. To perpetuate the business opportunity scheme, certain of the participants sold alleged services purporting to make the management of victims' businesses more efficient or profitable. Hey, we got you. The AUSAs allege this includes tax preparation or website design services, notwithstanding that many of the victims were elderly and did not own a computer. Okay, well, what kind of online business you running without a computer? That's exactly what the AUSA was thinking too. At the outset of the business opportunity scheme, certain participants employed by a purported fulfillment company sent a given victim electronic or paper pamphlets or provided so-called, quote, coaching sessions regarding these purported online businesses, but at no point did the defendants intend that the victims would actually earn any of the promised returns in their intended investment, nor did the victims actually earn such returns. So essentially, we're selling you a business and we're going to have these coaching sessions, it sounds like, to tell you how to join our opportunity. And we're going to give you paper pamphlets because we don't think you're internet savvy enough, Emily's speculation, to understand. And maybe you don't have a computer, but we're going to get you this online business. And it sounds to me like, oh, we'll get you this online business and we will help you manage it. And if you pay us this, we'll make it easier to management. So almost like white labeling an online business is what it sounds like they're selling. Hey, we've got this turnkey business for you. And all you have to do is just, pay us. and we've got you. And then people never saw the returns. That's what this sounds like to me based on this indictment and on the fact that Jen Shah was purporting that she was doing some kind of an online business opportunity for women during the pandemic to take their businesses online. I'm sure that the Bravo watchers have found all of those old posts and will bring them to light in the days to come. Paragraph 5 of the indictment. Jennifer Shah and Stuart Smith, the defendants, undertook significant efforts to conceal their roles in the business opportunity scheme. For example, Shah and Smith, among other things, incorporated their business entities using third parties' names. Okay, so my next step will be trying to figure out what the underlying businesses are, because now I'm dead curious to see if we can suss that out. So they didn't use their names for their businesses. I'm also wondering if the other businesses she's talked about got money from this scheme, and that's going to become a hot mess, but we'll get there. They also instructed, according to the indictment, other participants to do the same. They used and directed others to use encrypted messaging applications to communicate with other participants, instructed other participants to send their share of certain fraud proceeds to offshore bank accounts. You know why this is in here? This is in here because they've shown the offshore bank accounts, or at least information tying the offshore bank accounts to the grand jury, who then said, seems legit, and made numerous cash withdrawals structured to avoid currency transaction reporting requirements. So the AUSAs are alleging that the way they were withdrawing money was essentially broken up to avoid triggering, you have to report this amount of money. Don't we love an offshore bank account? Don't we love how many housewives now have offshore bank accounts that have been alleged in lawsuits? Oy. The statutory allegations here, and then we're going to get to count 2. So the statutory allegations here are that from at least 2020 to March 2021 in the Southern District, Shah and Stuart participated in this, where they did conspire, confederate, agree together, combined, and agree together to commit wire fraud in connection with the conduct of telemarketing, as that term is defined in Title 18 U.S. Code, Section 2325, which did victimize, this is an additional allegation that would have been proven to the grand jury, which did victimize 10 or more persons over the age of 55 in violation of Title 18 United States Code 1343 and 2326. So there's that allegation that more than 10 victims were over the age of 55, which under the law, I'm not saying this, do not come at me, under the laws, that can get you into the elderly category. I don't agree either, folks, but that's what the law says. Over the age of 55 is a thing. We don't want people taken advantage of if they are less particularly technologically savvy or more vulnerable or susceptible to these types of frauds, which is why the victims of a lot of these types of frauds are over the age of 55, because they are vulnerable, hence the laws. Moving on to paragraph 7, it was a part and object of the conspiracy that Shah and Smith, the defendants, and others, others known and unknown, willfully and knowingly having devised and intending to devise a scheme and artifice to defraud, and for obtaining money and property by means of false or fraudulent pretenses, representations, and promises, would and did transmit and cause to be transmitted by means of wire communication in interstate and foreign commerce, writing, signs, signals, pictures, and sounds for the purpose of executing such scheme and artifice. So that is the crime. That is them detailing the crime. They did these individual things that are the crime. So the reason there are so many words strung together by commas is because this is the crime of wire fraud being laid out. They used a scheme and artifice to defraud, to obtain money or property by means of false pretenses or representations or promises. They transmitted that through the wire, interstate and foreign, using writing. That could be text, letters, emails, signs, signals, pictures, sounds, could be voice, and what have you. So this is breaking down what wire fraud is. It just has a lot of words strung together. So that's the wire fraud. in violation of Title 18, U.S. Code 1343 and 2326. Shah and Smith and others induced and caused victims, many over the age of 55, to pay thousands of dollars to obtain so-called, quote, coaching and, quote, business services, which they represented would make the management of the victims' purported online businesses more efficient and profitable, when in actuality, the services would provide little or no value to the victims' businesses, which were essentially non-existent. So that's where my perception that this was them selling, like, hey, we'll get you an online business. Hey, we'll coach you towards this online business. Hey, we'll sell you business services like taxes and web designs. We've got you. Just keep paying us. And we learn more about this in the underlying indictment as well. Count two. Conspiracy to commit money laundering. Yep, money laundering. The grand jury further charges in paragraph 8, the allegations contained in 1 through 5 are realleged. Paragraph 9, 2020 to November 2019. So it's interesting to me because November 2019 is when the underlying indictment and arrests happened. So it looks like they're alleging that the money laundering activity stopped in November 2019. This indicates to me that there was activity happening from 2012 to November 2019 when the other indictment went down and others were arrested. Something changed. Jen Shah would have been aware because they're alleging that she participated in this money laundering in that period of time and not after. So between November 2019 and March 2021, they still allege the scheme for telemarketing continued, but they're not alleging that the money laundering continued, which is very telling to me that she was aware because this behavior stopped, but the other behavior didn't. Right? This goes in and re-alleges in paragraph 9 that this happened in, the United States and New York, that they worked together for that conspiracy. The conspiracy is the working together with others. On to paragraph 10, it says it was a part and object of the conspiracy that Shah and Smith and others known and unknown, knowing that the property involved in certain financial transactions, to wit, cash transactions from wire transfers, represented the proceeds of some form of unlawful activity, would and did conduct and attempt to conduct such financial transactions, which in fact involved the proceeds of specified unlawful activity. That's a whole lot of words to say they got money from unlawful shit and they knew it was unlawful. Therefore, they, knowing that the money was from unlawful sources and that the transactions were designed in whole or in part, they allege, to conceal and disguise the nature, location, source, ownership, and control of the proceeds of specified unlawful activity in violation of 18 U.S. Code 1956. They knew it came from sketchy sources from the wire fraud, and they took actions to conceal its origin. They call it money laundering because you take essentially crime money or dirty money and you run it through other avenues to try to wash away the taint on that money or to make it clean. So you can see people money laundering through secondary businesses, through properties, like you buy it with dirty money, then you sell it, and then you get money out of it, and it becomes harder to trace through transactions and things like that. Crime movies. It's crime boss movie shit. Paragraph 11, it's further a part and object of the conspiracy that Shah and Smith and others known and unknown, knowing that the property involved in certain financial transactions, to wit, which means, for example, e.g., cash transactions and wire transfers, represented the proceeds of some form of unlawful activity, would and did conduct and attempt to conduct such financial transactions, which in fact, the proceeds of specified unlawful activity, to wit, wire fraud, knowing that the transactions were designed in whole or in part to avoid a transaction reporting requirement under state and federal law in violation of 18 U.S.C. 1956. So there's kind of two parts to the money laundering. They tried to conceal the source of the funds, and then they tried to take part to avoid detection in the transaction reporting requirements. So two parts alleged with that money laundering. Here's part 3. It is further part and object of the conspiracy of Shah and Smith that defendants and others knowingly would and did engage and attempt to engage in monetary transactions in criminally derived property of a value greater than $10,000 that was derived from specified unlawful activity, to wit, wire fraud, 18 USC 1956. So those are like the three parts of the three different sections that get it into this conspiracy to commit money laundering. Then we get to forfeiture allegations. Forfeiture means give me yo shit that you bought with the criminal money. Oh, we tracked a wire transfer and then you bought some shit. Mine now, says the US government. Mine. Yes, it's a Nemo reference. It is. Forfeiture allegations, paragraph 13. As a result of committing the offense alleged in count 1, Jen Shah and Stuart Smith, defendants shall forfeit to the United States, Title 18 USC 982A8, any and all real or personal property. Maybe the mink coat. Maybe the house. But T, the house alleged in here, not the house that's on Real Housewives. I tell you what. Back to the indictment. Real or personal property used or intended to be used to commit, facilitate, promote the commission of said offense, and any and all real or personal property constituting, derived from, traceable to the gross proceeds. If we can track it to this, it's ours. I've done forfeiture proceedings. They're very interesting. People get cranky about them, but I've told you about the like theft of a yacht case that I worked. Yeah, we've talked about it. People get really, really bent out of shape about the forfeiture allegations. There are some people who I really think would rather go to jail than have you take their money. But it's like, hey, baby, I got your money, got your money. That's the AUSAs as they're tracking this stuff down, going, baby. You know, they were saying that when she went on Real Housewives too. They're like, let me see your shit, girl. Okay. Put it all on television. Worked so well for Teresa Giudice. Back to criminal forfeiture. Any and all real property constituting, derived from, or traceable to the gross proceeds that the defendant obtained directly or indirectly as a result of said offense, the wire fraud, including but not limited to a sum of money in United States currency representing the amount of proceeds traceable to the commission of said offense, and the real property described as, and then I redacted the address in Leahy, Utah, but I did look it up on Zillow. Not that Zillow is the most reliable source, but the house they're talking about is a 1,600 square foot, 3-bed, 2-bath home worth about $600,000. So that's the property that was listed. That is not the house. That is not the Shaw Chalet that was on the show. I will tell you that. And that doesn't mean that that might not be the co-defendant's house. That could be Stuart Smith's house. That isn't necessarily Jen Shah's house. It could be Stuart Smith's house. There are 2 defendants here and 1 real property described. Paragraph 14, as a result of committing the offense alleged in count 2 of this indictment, Shah and Smith, defendants, forfeit to the United States any and all property, real and personal, involved in said offense. So computers, phones, stuff, or any property traceable to such property, including but not limited to a sum of money in the United States currency representing the amount of property involved in said offense. Substitute asset provision is just, hey, if we can't track down the money, but we know how much it was, but we can't track exactly where it went to, we can still forfeit other shit in place of that shit. We can find it. So if it's been sold or deposited or placed beyond the jurisdiction, we can go after something to substitute for it. So don't think you're just going to go ahead and wiggle out of it. So the substitute asset forfeiture is there. This is signed by the foreperson of the grand jury. And that is the end of the Shah indictment. We're going to get into the underlying indictment in just one moment from the other 9 defendants. But first, I think we should take a look at what the U.S. attorneys said in their press release regarding this, because they had a bit to say. So this, for those of you on the YouTubes, I'm going to put a link to this if you want to read it yourself, because it's there. The Department of Justice press release from yesterday, March 30th, says reality show cast members because her assistant, charged with running nationwide telemarketing fraud scheme. Jennifer Shah and Stuart Smith allegedly profited by generating lists of victims for targeting and directing co-conspirators to defraud them. Right. Shah and Smith were arrested earlier today and will be presented this afternoon in Salt Lake City Federal Court before the United Magistrate Judge Dustin Peed. Manhattan AUSA Audrey Strauss said, quote, Jennifer Shah, who portrays herself as a wealthy and successful business person on reality television. By the way, you go, Audrey Strauss, for saying business person and not businesswoman. I just appreciate the use of inclusive language in the press release regarding criminal activity. Sass. And this is where we will see the sass. But thank you. Inclusive language. We dig you, Audrey Strauss. Damn it. I'm going to mess that up. It's Strauss. Her last name is Strauss. Could be Strauss. Straus. Either way, we appreciate the sass. Successful business person on quote. There's a quote. Reality television. What is she shading Bravo? Is she implying that this is scripted, that this isn't reality? Either way. And Stuart Smith, who is portrayed as Shah's first assistant. If you haven't watched the show, she's got like 7 assistants. It's a thing. Allegedly generated and sold lead lists of innocent individuals for other members of their scheme to scam. In actual reality, and as alleged, the so-called business opportunities pushed on the victims by Shah and Smith and their co-conspirators were just fraudulent schemes motivated by greed to steal victims' money. Now these defendants face time in prison for their alleged crimes. Boom. The special agent in charge, Peter C. Fitzhugh, said, quote, Shah and Smith flaunted. Okay. My only issue is that I think that Shah flaunted, maybe not her assistant. He was on the show as her assistant, but okay. Shah and Smith flaunted their lavish lifestyle to the public as a symbol of their success. In reality, they allegedly built their opulent lifestyle at the expense of vulnerable, often elderly working class people. It sounds like the Girardis. Weird. Allegedly. As alleged, disturbingly, Shah and Smith objectified their very real human victims as, quote, leads to be bought and sold, offering their personal information for sale to other members of their fraud ring, working with our partners at the NYPD and the United States Attorney's Office, SDNY, and with the assistance of HSI Salt Lake City, HSI New York, worked to ensure that Shah and Smith will answer for their alleged crimes. As a result, their new reality... I mean, their new reality may very well turn out differently than they expected. The shade of it all. Yes, I've seen the jokes online. Yes, I've seen the smells like prison. I've seen it. If you didn't watch SLC, that makes no sense. But as a result, their new reality may very well turn out different than they expected. The shade of it all. It is. And that's the special agent in charge. That is the cop person. This is the attorney person. The NYPD commissioner, Dermot Shea, said, quote, these individuals allegedly targeted and defrauded hundreds of victims, but thanks to the hard work of NYPD and our law enforcement partners, this illegal scheme was brought to an end. This indicates to me that they aren't expecting to bring in more defendants, that this is kind of the end of this scheme. There are now 11 defendants in this, and the way that they said this brought the scheme to an end indicates to me that they aren't anticipating more indictments or more arrests on this by that language. I congratulate the NYPD detectives, Homeland Security Investigations, that's HSI, and the U.S. Attorney of the Southern District of New York for their hard work bringing these persons to justice, according to the allegations and the superseding indictment. And then they restate the indictment that we just went through, so we're not going to restate it again. Yes, I know I restate things 17 times, but we already did it. Shah, 47 of Park City, Utah, and Smith, 43 of Leahy, Utah. Oh, indicating again that probably is his house that they're trying to attach and not her house, because that house is in Leahy, Utah. So the forfeiture might be as to his home, which is very interesting. Does Jen Shah not own a home? Is it not connected to this business? I have more questions. They are each charged with one count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud in connection with telemarketing, through which they victimized 10 or more persons over the age of 55, which carries a maximum sentence of 30 years, and one count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. The maximum potential sentences in this case are prescribed by Congress and are provided here for informational purposes only. Do not go say they're getting this many. Thank you for the correction of pronounced Leahy as Lehigh. I'm not hugely familiar with all of Utah, so thank you. I will get it better. I will do it right. I pronounce things wrong all the time. Thank you. Lehigh, Utah. Perfect. I mean, I guess it is spelled Lehi, and I could have figured that out, but no. So don't go saying they're getting like 50 years in prison, but that's what they are. That's what they're saying. Any sentencing will be determined by the judge. That's their little like FYI. The case is being handled by the office's Money Laundering and Transactional Crimes Enterprises unit. So this is a special unit that deals with money laundering and transactional crime enterprises. If you believe you've been a victim of the scheme, and then there's contact information. So if someone in Utah is watching this going, holy shit, that happened to me, my mom, my dad, my aunt, my grandma, my grandpa, whoever, you can contact them here. The U.S. Attorney's Office has contact information for the Attorney's Office and for the detective. The charges contained in the superseding indictment are merely accusations. The defendants are presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty. Great press release, little bit of shade, OMG. I am going to talk about the underlying indictment, and then we're going to get to questions. I know I'm talking fast. It's a lot to cover, and I have a hard stop today, and I want to make sure we have time for questions. When I say underlying indictment, what I mean is the original charging document of the first group that was arrested. And the first group that was arrested is 9 individuals. I don't want to mispronounce names. It's going to happen. So Anthony Cheedy, I know who none of these people are. Anthony Cheedy, Chad Allen, Shane Hanna, Cameron Brewster, Kevin Handren, 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 Joseph Casico, also known as Joseph Gallagher, Joseph Minetto, Joseph DePaula, aka Joe Hall. I would be happy to see it be Joey Hall, like, yo, Joey Hall, but no, it's not. Derek Larkin, aka Derek Martin, and Maddie Cirillo. So that is the group. They are charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud. A lot of them are alleged to be owners of those floors. The scheme that's listed out in these charges in this underlying indictment from November 2019 is the same. It is the business services, with an additional segment that there were also debt services. So in this indictment, they talk about the sales floors, they talk about the telemarketing, but they go on to say that Allen, Hanna, Brewster, and Handren operated in coordination with several telemarketing sales floors in New York and New Jersey area, including in Manhattan, and provided lead lists and fulfillment services to other participants operating these floors, including Anthony Cheedy, Joseph Casico, and Joseph Minetto, the defendants. Brewster, for example, provided lead lists generated through a website referred to by Brewster and other co-conspirators as the money-sucking website, or the MSW. They were getting leads through a website and they called it the money-sucking website, which is exactly what they were doing with people. OMG. Casico and Minetto employed several salespeople who sold the so-called business services to victims of the business opportunity scheme and worked to prevent victims from recovering refunds in their investments. When there were no more services to sell, the victim, as part of the business opportunity scheme, or the victim had reached the maximum limit on their credit cards, the participants refinanced their victims' participation in the business opportunity scheme into a new scheme. So when they milked them for all and had nothing left to do, then they refinanced them, capitalizing on the business opportunity scheme victims' credit card debts by falsely claiming they would consolidate or settle their debt in exchange for an upfront payment. We have run you out of money. This is my dramatization of the indictment. But for one low price, we will go ahead and consolidate that debt. What? We have run you out of money and we're going to refinance it for you, but just pay us up front, which indicates to me people could have, Emily, DA brain speculation. People could have then gone to family members and been like, hey, can you lend me some money because I need to fix this because now you're in a hole. And what I know from financial victims, because I've worked in white collar crimes and financial crimes, they were some of my favorite because they were often very interesting and sophisticated, is that the amount of shame that victims have for getting pulled into a scheme like this often hampers them from stopping it going forward because they're embarrassed that they got into the scheme, and that shame works against them because they're like, oh shit, I shouldn't have been taken advantage of. I should have known better. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done this. And fraudsters take advantage of that going, I'll just help you. I'll just help you fix it because the shame plays against them. The shame plays against them in a huge way. And it's just it's so frustrating and so sad that people are like, oh, I'm going to use your shame for getting sucked in directly against you. Rage. Okay. This now is the debt relief scheme. The perpetrators of the debt relief scheme, and this is not what's alleged with regard to Jen Shah. This is the other participants in the same case. The debt relief scheme entered into a revenue sharing agreement with certain participants in the business opportunity scheme. So they were sharing these leads together. It's like, oh, well, we can't use them anymore. Here they are for you. My interpretation. Let me just back up on that sentence. The participants of the debt relief scheme entered into revenue sharing agreements with certain participants in the business opportunity scheme, by which the perpetrators of the debt relief scheme paid certain participants for leads based on a percentage of the sales made to victims. In truth and in fact, the perpetrators of the debt relief scheme did not settle or consolidate the victim's debt. Certain participants also falsely told victims that the victims had qualified for a government grant, and then it gets into more of the lies that are alleged to be told to these victims. Here's what's interesting to me. In paragraph 6 of this indictment, it says, in or about January 2019, law enforcement conducted a search of the telemarketing sales floors, which Derek Larkin and Maddie Cirillo, the defendants, were employed. They raided them in January 2019. After this indictment. Did Jen Shah know? I mean, you let me know what you think. The sales floors were raided. During the search, law enforcement seized several electronic devices from Larkin and Cirillo. Following the search, Larkin and Cirillo knowingly deleted their shit. They deleted their shit. You know why it's in the indictment? Because deleting your shit makes you look guilty as fuck. Just saying. That's why it's in this indictment. And this, again, passed down by a grand jury. Evidence went to the grand jury and they said, seems like it. Knowingly deleted and attempted to delete the data on those devices in an effort to prevent law enforcement from using that data in its ongoing investigation into the business opportunity scheme, which is the one that Jen Shah is alleged to have participated in. So yeah, as they get into this later, they said that they attempted to remotely delete things after it was seized. The federal government is like, oh, fuck you. That's not cute. This goes on to talk about obstruction of justice, which gets into the altering, destroying, manipulating, or concealing records, documents, and other objects, and in an attempt to do so, to impair the integrity and availability for use in an official proceeding. So now we get into the charges of obstruction of justice in the underlying complaint, not Jen Shah, the co-defendants, because they tried to remotely delete records from electronic devices seized from them during the judicially authorized search. Now, in a lot of these crimes, the investigators have Faraday rooms, or they go to the very, very bottom floor of a large building or parking structure. So there's no cell service so that these things can't be wiped remotely. It's actually a part of how they start the forensic examination, is making sure that these devices that get immediately put into like Faraday bags to block that kind of stuff from happening, so that they can maintain the integrity of these devices, because people often have means to delete them. There was this one dude, there was this one dude who had lined all the doorways in his home with fairly substantial magnets. So when the officers took all of the digital evidence, the computers and everything out, it automatically wiped them, because he knew once they had their hands on them, he couldn't remotely wipe them. So all of these magnets that wiped the computers as the feds took them out of the home. I was like, well, damn. I mean, you did the thing. It's very frustrating, but you did the thing. So it goes into them trying to remotely delete records. Then there's a forfeiture allegation on this. All I want to show you on the forfeiture allegation with regard to the underlying is how many bank accounts they had access to and how many businesses there were here. So this is number A. This is a bank account held by a business, Atlantic Business Company. B is a bank account, Redwood Business Development. C, bank account. D, bank account. These are all separate bank accounts. E, bank account. F, bank account. G, bank account. H, different bank account. I, bank account. J, bank account. Different business name. K, bank account. L, bank account. And when I say that I'm looking into these corporations, these are the ones I'm curious about. It's like Mr. Shack Inc. What? What is that? M, separate bank account. N, bank account. O, another bank account. Corporate Development Center, LLC. P, another bank account. G, another LMNOP. Q, dyslexic. I told you I was dyslexic. I gave you the warning for a reason. Another bank account. R, another bank account. S, T, U, V. No, U. U is the last bank account. Then it's real property in Laveen, Arizona, El Mirage, Arizona, Sandy, Utah, Las Vegas, Nevada, Washington Township, New Jersey, Hillsdale, New Jersey. So these are all real properties that they're asking for asset forfeiture on. And then the substitute asset forfeiture, that is the underlying indictment with the other defendants. I will say that with regard to the other defendants, a number of them have already pled guilty in this case to the conspiracy to commit wire fraud. So from the dockets that I pulled, Derek Larkin and Maddie Cirillo pled guilty, one on January 21st, 2021, and one on February 8th, 2021. So fairly recently, they pled guilty in that. And that is a breakdown of the indictment. Let's talk about really quickly what happened in court. I'm going to pull up the Twitter account. There is a reporter who was covering this, and I wanted to shout out that Twitter account in case you wanted to watch along as court goes on. I'm sure they will continue reporting on it today as more happens in court. But he did a kind of a live tweet of what went down in court yesterday. What happened in court yesterday, as I pull this up, is that she was told by the court, essentially, you're being named in this indictment. Are you this individual? Now you have to appear in court in New York tomorrow. So it was not an arraignment. It was just an initial appearance. So John Franchi of John Franchi Reports is a Emmy Award winning anchor and reporter at KSTU Fox 13 Utah. He's on Good Day Utah, and he live tweeted it. So he's live tweeted other stuff. My colleague Ben Winslow has an update on Jen Shah. Just in, Fox 13 has confirmed the case against Jen Shah is part of a larger telemarketing wire fraud case. Well, I discovered that last night, and so did Bravo Bone Collector over on Instagram. Like, the Bravo watchers got at this very quickly. So 4 of the 12 defendants have already pled guilty. See, I haven't finished digging into it. It was a lot yesterday going through all of the Pacer stuff. I only saw the 2 pleas. I'm going to go back and look at them. So John Franchi had the story that was put out, talked about what happened in court, had the pictures of her leaving court, still in full glam with those boots that we talked about and the jacket. There's the boots. There's the boot. This is going to be a Halloween costume for somebody. If we're allowed to have Halloween. And said that the court indicated they are not seeking to detain her prior to trial. Worth noting, she could appear virtually in the New York court. The judge set these conditions: commit no federal offense while on release, must appear as required, no travel out of Utah except to appear in court in New York, no international travel, avoid contact with co-defendants, no engagement in telemarketing. We'll see what the court in New York does. They can set bail if they want to. They can have her surrender her passport and things like that. So it looks like she will be arraigned today in New York. This reporter, I share this, and I will share this on my Twitter as well, is the one that's covering it. I'm just going to retweet this real quick so that you guys can find that on my Twitter account as well. And let's get to questions. That's what happened in court. We'll see the arraignment today. We'll see if bail is set today. We'll see if her passport is forfeited and stuff. But let's get to your questions. Please mark them with a question. I know we've been going fast today. If you are new here and are just turning in for the Housewives legal tea, totally fair. Go ahead and subscribe to become a Law Nerd. Like the video. We're at almost 3,000 of y'all watching, so let me know. Let me know how many likes we're at. Y'all, it's so much. Okay, here's my initial thoughts as we're getting into your questions. Thoughts. She's not going to do 30 years. That's never going to happen. She will probably plea in this. We're seeing other defendants that already have pled. The U.S. Attorney's Office, and there's times, okay, look, there are times that state prosecutors, I was one of those, would have federal agents come to our office and be like, hey, the U.S. attorneys don't want to file this because they say XYZ, this isn't strong enough, this isn't that. I've dropped things. They don't want to file this case. Like somebody didn't confess on video. Somebody, we don't have everything they would like. And I would look at the case and be like, damn, that's a great case. I'll file that case. The U.S. attorneys do not pick cases that they are want to lose. They pick cases that they can wrap up with a bow and video and so many documents that it is probably going to plea, because by the time you sit down with your attorney, the U.S. attorneys are like, hi, we have your life. And we'd like to hear what you have to say about that. You will also see in federal cases somebody who's got lower culpability, very chatty, which is how the college admission scandal all happened, right? One individual got dinged on potentially bribery and was like, I know you're looking at me about this, but let me tell you about what's going on over there. Blah, 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 blah. So I'm sure the people who have pled have talked about shit for sure. Can that be used against Jen Shah? Yup, it sure can. I was asked yesterday on Clubhouse if I thought her husband was involved. What I think about that is that if they had the evidence to indict her husband, they would have done it when they indicted her. Especially now that I see that there are 9 other defendants that were previously charged. Seeing that there are 9 other defendants that were previously charged in this indicates to me that by the time we get to here, if they thought Coach Shah was involved, if they had the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he was involved, they would have charged him. It's not like they're just not gonna. So I think that they don't have enough for that. Does that mean he didn't know? Not necessarily. Does that mean that they can't prove that he knew? Probably. But the AUSAs don't fucking play. And it's just, it is joked about that the AUSAs only take cases that are like, it's a slam dunk, swoosh style. It's not questionable. Where DAs are like, I can prove that. A jury might disagree on these 2 things, but I can prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. So much Housewives stuff. I did not mention that What FC, that her husband was an attorney for quite a number of years. I know he's coaching football now. I don't know if his license is still active. It doesn't matter. He still has knowledge, right? Whether your license is active or not. He practiced for over 15 years. So this is a whole lot of shit, isn't it? Just a whole lot of shit. A whole lot of stuff. Kirby said, damn, that's actually freaking smart. See, here's the thing about criminals. There's a lot of them that do very clever things. And I'm assuming that that's regarding the magnets. Fraudsters can be very clever, often also very arrogant. And a lot of the ones that I prosecuted also very misogynistic, which was really interesting because they're like, oh, woman, little brain. And I was like, you go ahead and think that, buddy. I get to listen to your jail calls. No, Lehigh, we got it. Sorry that I pronounced Lehigh. I'm going to butcher the way things are said, but I always appreciate the corrections. Let's get into a few more questions. It is a classic case we use in teaching on digital security. Very, very cool, Mazai. I hope I pronounced that right. Jamila, I agree with you that this is all bad because it is. It was quite a lot of bank accounts, but that was for all the different business entities covering 9 defendants. So it's just, I brought that part of the kind of underlying indictment up to show how much information the AUSAs have when they file this, because that's an indictment that went to a grand jury and they showed the grand jury all of those things, and the grand jury went, yeah, we cool. So it was just by way of showing that. Questions. So did one of the defendants drop a dime on Jem? It absolutely could have happened. We don't know how they discovered her activity in the scheme. We do know this has been going on since 2012. We do know they've been investigating it. We do know that they filed the first indictment in 2019 and she was not a part of it. So it's very possible that when they arrested the others and got more evidence, that it tied it back more closely to her. But if they were trying to tie it back to her, they were trying to tie, if they didn't have her in 2019, which they didn't because they didn't indict her then, she went on Real Housewives while they were working to tie this back to her. What? I have to go watch that whole season again. What is the highest repercussion? How much jail time? I mean, the maximum jail time on those 2 charges combined is 50 years, but you don't get full term on both. So it would be 30 years plus something. I didn't do the math on it, but probably in that 40-ish year range. That's not going to she's not going to get 40 years or 30 years. If she does prison time, I will be pleasantly surprised. And I have not seen what the plea agreements were for the others. Once I see what other individuals got in this, I will have a better kind of gauge on it of what they got and what they're getting. But there are a lot of victims, which does push you more likely into jail time. I mean, we saw Teresa Giudice got jail time. The people that she defrauded were companies, not individuals. So judges tend to be less empathetic when it comes to, you know, defrauding hundreds of individuals, most over the age of 55. The court looks at that with less sympathy. There's like a harsher kind of take on that versus attempting to defraud banks. Banks can cover, banks have procedures in place. There's restitution, and the bank can be made whole easier than an individual. So that is why I think this is more likely maybe to carry jail time because of the amount of individuals. But I also can't tell from these charging documents yet who is the kind of tip of the pyramid on all of this and where she figures. They did allege in this indictment that she had quite a bit of direction and control over where the leads went. So given that she had that alleged amount of direction and control, that kind of puts her not by a passive like co-conspirator, but as somebody who is actually directing parts of this scheme, which also again then makes it more likely that she could do time in federal prison because these are all felonies. So prison. Let's see. Questions. Lynn Alex asks, what if the victim checked the box that said the company could share their info? Does the crime override that permission? I mean, that assumes that there was a box that company could share your permission, but you can't consent to illegal activity because you're not being told that they're sharing your permission for a valid purpose. So you can't say, "Oh yeah, you can share my information to be defrauded." The part of this is not the sharing the information. Part of this is you shared it knowing they were going to be defrauded. Like you delivered them up for the criminal enterprise. It's not just a, oh, well, we've shared your information for marketing purposes. She might in her head have thought that what was happening, but the US attorneys said they knew that when they were selling these leads, that they were selling them into a fraud ring. That's what the allegations are here. 725 likes. Yo, there's almost 3,000 of you in here. I know you don't want to swipe out and like, but go ahead. Thank you so much, Cassandra. This was a quick breakdown because I do have a hard stop. Between Mary allegedly making her congregation's members go into debt, taking out mortgages, and Jen Shah allegedly taking advantage of elderly people, I don't know who's more crooked. Kiki James, I will be very interested in seeing what comes out with regard to Mary and her allegation. I have seen quite a lot of memes online about Jen Shah screaming at Mary. Yeah. If you aren't a Real Housewives of Salt Lake City fan, you have no idea what I'm talking about. And I should just tell you. So Jen Shah screamed at Mary that she fucked her grandfather because Mary married her grandmother's husband, who's not like her biological grandfather, but I guess that would have made him her step grandfather. Anyway, Mary married her grandmother's after her grandmother passed away, married her grandmother's widower, and Jen Shah was screaming about that. So some of the memes online are regarding Jen Shah fucking grandparents in a different way than Mary. Look, I was not anticipating Salt Lake City Housewives to be so fucking spicy, but it was a spicy season. Does this mean she'll be removed from Real Housewives? That is a great question, Jedi Mama. There is speculation with that. When I was in the clubhouse room yesterday, we were talking about it. I've not worked television production. I don't know what goes on in the minds of production. I had some friends who worked production. We didn't often talk about it a lot. So production can, in my kind of lay opinion, if Jen Shah is told by her attorneys, you can't film, she and Bravo are going to have a conversation about if she stops filming with them and if that's a breach of her contract or not. I imagine that if there's there are criminal proceedings pending where she could go to prison and she knows it, that Bravo would not kind of hold her feet to the fire and be like, no, you have to get on camera while this is pending. Will they remove her? They didn't remove Teresa Giudice. And they haven't removed others that have been under investigation. And if she needs to pay restitution, maybe she needs that money coming in from the show. Will the show capitalize on the plot line? Absolutely. Could the attorneys or the AUSAs ask for all the footage from the show and pause production right now? That could happen because they're currently filming. Again, all of this shit is happening while they're currently filming. I want to be a fly on the wall wherever Andy Cohen is when this kind of news breaks. I want to know, like when the Erica, Jane, and Tom Girardi stuff started breaking, what was his reaction? Like I want an Andy Cohen reality show. When this came down yesterday and the Bravo universe was shooketh, what was Andy's reaction? Was it like, oh fucking hell? Or was it, well, here we go, season 2, Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. Here we go. So I don't know. I'll be very curious to see what she does. Question, how is she able to plea? She's going to basically get off sad. Sweet and sassy, a plea doesn't necessarily mean they get off. A plea means that they take a calculated amount of responsibility. They plead guilty to the charges and are sentenced to whatever punishment is agreed upon, and they don't go through a trial. It's an admission of guilt pre-trial. So will she be allowed to plea? Yes. Even if she went to trial, would a judge sentence her to the maximum on this without a prior criminal record? Probably not. I mean, really, really unlikely. So a plea deal in a case like this allows them to take responsibility, saves the government the money and time of a trial, But again, the defendant has the right to choose if they plea or not. And the government has the right to choose if they offer a plea deal or not. I can't imagine that they wouldn't, especially if there's other people they're still looking for. But based on the press release, I think they're done because it said they brought this scheme to an end, which also indicates to me she's maybe one of the points of the scheme. So pleading doesn't mean you get off. Pleading means you take responsibility for a calculated and determined sentence between the prosecutor and the judge. So AC says Jen is a narcissist. I genuinely didn't think she would get caught. I mean, that's the way with a lot of fraud cases. And she was filming, it seems, after this all went down. What? Kiki Ray says, question, could the Housewife franchise be a blackmail honeypot? So many housewives being arrested, or are we going with just stupid people looking for fame? I don't know. It's wonderful speculation. I really don't know. I think people, well, I mean, after Teresa Giudice, I don't think Teresa had any idea what she was getting into with Housewives. It was so new. And I don't think she realized how much it would prompt people to look into her as she's like flashing cash around. And the IRS was going, that's odd. We need to peek at what's going on there. These things don't add up. And then everything that unraveled with her and her husband, I think others would be cautious. Again, I don't know how much Erica Girardi knew about what was going on with Tom Girardi, or knew how much she would get swooped into it. I don't know. And again, from the LA Times reporting, the Girardi stuff has been going on for decades. But Jen Shah is not being arrested in connection to shit that someone she was married to is doing. She's not the kind of the lower man on the pole with this. She's in the pole position of this and bringing her assistant along for the ride. So this is the first time I think we're seeing a housewife who is the one in the driver's seat of their criminal enterprise, according to the allegations. Ratings soared when Teresa went to prison. Yes, they did, KDD, because we all want to fucking see it because we're awful. Because we all want to know. Ratings soared when Teresa went to prison, but it was also a very different time, and she got away with lying on the show because most people didn't dig into the blogs and tabloids. It was a different time. And the thing with Teresa is, I think for a lot of people, the morality, and this is where we talk about the difference between legality and morality. The morality of, signing your name on fraudulent mortgage applications, lies, frauds, it upsets the stream of commerce, difficult to the banks, but defrauding a banking institution hits different than defrauding seniors and hundreds of seniors. It hits different for people. So I don't know how the Bravo audience will like seeing this because it's just a different nature of crime. And again, Erica, I imagine, will go on season 11 and be like, poor me, I didn't know my husband was doing all of this. But Erica's is going to hit different too, because you're looking at, again, human individual victims, not business organizations, individuals who trusted their attorney, which is why the moral outrage with the Erica stuff is like, why are you posting like nothing's wrong? This feels gross. The Jen Shah stuff is going to feel gross to people too. She'll be the age of her victims when she gets out of prison, and maybe she should have shown the same kindness she showed to her victims when she gets out. Jen Shah, if she goes to prison, is going to come out looking like a different person because she spent a lot of time on the show talking about a lot of her fillers and her habit with her fillers. So imagine she goes to prison for 3 years. What will Jen Shah's face look like when she comes out? Like, no shade to fillers. I have no problem with it. You Botox and plump your heart's content. We'll get there too, I'm sure. But just imagine. Okay, I got way behind on the stuff. Elizabeth says, but why can people over 55 start an e-commerce business? I think you're asking why can't. Anyone can start an e-commerce business. What they're alleging in the indictment is that they were targeting individuals over 55 who didn't all even have a computer to sell them a fake e-commerce business, saying, we're going to get you online. We're going to do all this stuff, thinking that the people might not understand. It's like, look, I'm selling you interest in a racehorse. I mean, that's can be legitimate, and it'll just do its thing and it'll make you money and it'll all be great. And you just have to pay us and we'll just handle it for you. That's what it seems like this scheme is. They buy into like, hey, I'm going to buy into having this online business. And then I'm going to buy into the tax services. And then I'm going to buy into the web design services. And I'm going to buy all these tangential services. And it's going to be a business that's like a turnkey business that's just going to run on its own. Question. So where might I find the Fed's Housewives unit? I would love to apply. And it looks like a full-time job. Jez, me too. Like if my job as a prosecutor were watching uncut footage of Housewives to find people making incriminating statements, I would get back into prosecution for sure. I'd be like, I volunteer as tribute. I have a deep knowledge. I've been a lawyer for over 15 years at this point. And I did work at the U.S. Attorney's Office and I really enjoyed it. And I'm happy to come back. I worked in, as a law student in the tax crimes division and I freaking loved it. And the supervising attorney was like, you love this. I'm like, I'm a nosy bitch. And I spend all day going through people's bank records. Yup. I love it. And in where I was in LA, the tax fraud division was people who owed millions and millions to the IRS. So they were very complex schemes of avoiding taxes that they hadn't avoided. And I love it. I was like, let me see the tea. No, Kirby, I'm not. Look, I loved my time as a prosecutor. I love doing this equally as much. I don't want to go back to having a boss. I don't. Question off topic. What Real Housewife shows are you obsessed with? I watch them all. That's not true. I don't watch Dallas. I never got into Dallas. And I hadn't gotten into Salt Lake City when it aired. And then I binge watched it and was like, holy God, this is amazing. It was everything. Salt Lake was everything. I've watched Orange County. Orange County isn't doing it for me lately, but I've watched Orange County since its inception. Also, I enjoy the reason I still watch Orange County is because I like watching them go to places that I know, which maybe is weird, but if any of you live in a housewife city, it's like, oh, I know there. Oh, I know there. New Jersey's always super spicy. I miss Bethany Frankel, but I will always watch New York. It is what it is. I need to catch up on Potomac. How does this taint Coach Shah's career? It depends if Coach Shah has a morality clause. It depends on if the university receives backlash. And it depends if he's perceived as like, I didn't know. Because on the show, he's working all the time. So is it perceived as I didn't know? Oh, Kibby, I'm sorry, Kibby. I apologize. I'm sorry. I do that. I do the things. Thank you, Allie. I know it's almost burrito time. I got to get wrapping up soon. So it just depends on how it's perceived. I mean, I lived in Los Angeles where, coaches at USC did all kinds of shady shit. And then they went on to coach the Seahawks. I'm just saying. I mean, except for their water polo coach who got caught in the college admission scandal. But it depends on how it's perceived, and it depends on what the rules are for his position with, I believe, University of Utah. So can it affect his career? Absolutely. Is this going to affect their family? Absolutely. The thing about all of this that makes me so angry is she has kids. And as a parent, I can't imagine putting your kids in the position where they have to live through you doing this. Like putting your kids in the position where they have to see you going to jail. Like this is a very large fraud scheme. This is not literally participating in criminal activity to put food on the table. They have money. Her husband has been an attorney, is a football coach. It seems to me, perception, that they maybe didn't have the amount of money she wanted, but it's not as if they could not take care or provide for their family with the skills and jobs that they had. When the press release says this is based on greed, it feels that way to me as well, as a lot of fraud schemes are. So when we talk about criminality in a scheme like this is just A, the thrill of it, B, the wanting more of it, and C, that fast money becomes intoxicating for people. But it's infuriating because it's unnecessary. Like, you're fine otherwise. So what, like, if you feel the need to have that much money to flaunt that much wealth, maybe therapy, because your self-worth shouldn't be based on your monetary net worth. Your self-worth should be something deeper than that. And now your kids have to go through this. And now your kids have to deal with this. And that it's the same. I talked about on the Emily Show podcast about the mom in Florida that was like rigging the homecoming election and changing votes, and then the mom that did the deep fakes. And yes, there's a new episode of the Emily Show coming today. It will be dropped on the channel later, and the audio version's live. It's a whole Girardi catch up before the fucking state bar filed charges yesterday. Like, do they not know I record? I'm teasing. I don't think the state bar gives a fuck when I record. They drop things when they drop them. I am aware of this. But anyway, it came out after I had recorded. But all of that, like, your kids are going through this too. For what? Like, for what are you dragging your family through this? I mean, we're a UCLA family over here. UCLA won the men's water polo tournament. My brother played water polo at UCLA. I know. He also won the national championships when he was there. And UCLA's in the Final Four. So, question, how often as a prosecutor did you see a spouse having intimate knowledge of crimes, or did you see where the spouse frequently didn't know what was going on? There was a mix of both. With victims, I saw a lot that victims didn't let their spouses know because of that shame and embarrassment, potentially with embezzlement crimes and fraud crimes. Since I listened to a lot of jail calls, by the time we caught people, a lot of times there were people in their lives who knew bits of what was going on based on what I could derive. But often we did not charge people with their spouse because we just didn't have hard evidence that they were participating in it. We would often interview the people involved. Sometimes people would like know that something was up, but not know all the way. So they were like holding onto a computer or holding on to evidence. And once the officers went and were like, yo, this is what's happening, they'd be like, I don't fucking want to do it. Here, take whatever. With the fraud crimes, with the street crimes and the violent crimes, often people were aware, but then there isn't criminal culpability or liability because they were aware of the things that were happening. So it's a little bit different. Question. Wait, so her husband was not in the hospital? Correct. Her husband called her and said, I presume said something to the effect of, the FBI's here and they would like to have a chat with you. You should probably come home now. And I don't know if she was driving home to get home to meet the FBI at home, so she wasn't arrested on camera. I don't know. And I really hope the producers were like, oh, we need a crew. Follow Jen Shah. We need to see what's happening. But yeah, I believe she lied. Honestly, uncovering hypocrisy, I couldn't believe they took Michigan down either. Question, what book did you reference at the beginning of the stream? Melissa, I referenced Ghost in the Wires. It is fucking fantastic. I like the Audible version because I'm an Audible girl. Such a good book. Thank you, Law Nerds, for being amazing and coming through with the answers. I'm going to do 2 more questions and then I have to jet. How much can a spouse be brought in? I thought there was some protection, or is that just a movie thing? So there is some protection to people who are married. There is spousal privilege. Like, you can't be forced to testify against your spouse. So there is spousal privilege. So, there are times when it's like, hey, we're searching your house. You don't have to talk to us, but we're still searching the house and you can't obstruct us from doing that and things like that. I think that if they had evidence that he was involved, he would have been indicted with them if they could prove it. Again, the standard that the U.S. Attorney's Office, and this is not to say she's guilty, not guilty, these are allegations, but the standard of prosecution that the U.S. Attorney's Office uses is, we need this to have a bow on it or we're not fucking touching it. We have too much work to do as it is. So we need to be able to easily prove this well beyond a reasonable doubt, and it's probably going to plea anyway. And that's how they roll. That just is the thing. You guys, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. A new episode of the Emily Show video version will be up later this evening on the channel. It's live now for members only. Tomorrow, I'm going to be on Up and Adam. I'm also teaching for an hour. I'm a guest at the University of Memphis in a social media class. I'm very excited about it. I love talking to them about social media. I also have other podcast interviews. So there's going to be a lot coming out about this from me on my channel here on the podcast, and then on other people's platforms, the OPP. And I will always share those with you in the community tab, in the text crew, on Twitter, on Instagram. If you're not following me on the socials, it's at the Emily D. Baker. If you want to join the text crew, the link is down below. I will let you know when I'm doing things, and if I have to go live, when I go live. What else? New episode. Oh, tomorrow, after I'm on Up and Adam, after I talk to the University of Memphis, after I give podcast interviews, we have our members only live stream tomorrow. And that is just going to be all Q&A. So if you are a channel member, that will be up in the community tab. It is the first Thursday of every month, the members only live stream. I'm going to try to rope in the hubby for a little bit of a Q&A. So we will be live tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Central for the members only live stream. If you want to join the channel, you can join. Allie also linked it. Thank you so much, Allie. That's rad. So there's a lot of content from Emily coming up in the next few days. Up and Adam tomorrow. I'll share it in the community tab and on socials. New recorded video dropping today. Members only live stream, and then Friday Night Live. Oh, yes. And my Zach Peter interview is up now. I'll share that in the community tab as well. Thank you. There's going to be lots. Law nerds, you're amazing. Thank you for riding. I hope this breakdown was helpful. If you're in the replay crew, drop a question below. I will be in the questions later today to answer them for you, and I will be on socials. Come follow me there. I appreciate you. I love you, and I will see you in the next one. Connect with me everywhere. I'm at the Emily D. Baker. If you guys want to join the text, just text Emily.com. If you want to join the channel, lawnerdsunite.com. Happy to have you. Support what we do here on the YouTube